Hi again and welcome to Coffee with Craig. Today I'm going to make a few predictions about things like cryptocurrencies. I'm going to talk a little bit about cashless society in general and also talk about the way things are going for the far-term future for things such as connectivity, the internet and, like I say, a cashless society. So I start this transmission today with trepidation because I have no proper internet connection thanks to Virgin Media, and it's been like that for 4 days, and it just shows you how dependent we have become on technology. You know, I'm having to find a moment when the internet's available so I can upload and stuff and do whatever I can before I get cut off again. And it's shocking, really. I mean, these things happen from time to time, but when they happen for a period of time, you realise just how vulnerable your business particularly is and your work at large. And when we go into the supermarkets nowadays, Jane and I went in the other day and were shocked to find that the whole of Marks and Spencer's had gone completely counterless, as it were. Not a single cashier there. You had to do everything by scan, and they're all doing it now. Okay, you get a supervisor or two, but even the old guy that used to be on there when they had just 1 or 2 tills open, he's gone now. So there's another person's income chucked out the window, and more profit for the big corporates. And what if? And I looked at it all, and I thought, well, all this you can put cash in, but most of this depends upon me having a card and being able to pay for things by card and scan things myself, and the whole thing working, because all that information is being connected to the internet and marketed. They're saying even washing machines now gather information about you that you don't need, your date of birth and things like that. All information gathering, all stuff to learn about me, learn about my spending patterns, and even though I try to use cash all the time where I can, just to avoid all that type of thing, they have masses and masses of information about all of us. It's scary. And it's very scary to me, I think. And I was thinking a lot, and I've mentioned this before, what if they switched it all off? What if they switched me off? What if the internet got switched off? That would be a pretty terrifying thing. But what if they switched me off? They did it, didn't it? They did it with the Canadian truckers. They went out protesting and they just switched their money access off, tried to get rid of them during the COVID times. And they did it here with the politician Nigel Farage, who they switched off his bank account. A wokey bank didn't like the way he was behaving and didn't like his views, so they switched him off. And it backfired, of course, because he's made a big deal about it, and it deserves to backfire. But this is the danger, isn't it, that we are so dependent on these huge corporations, these huge businesses that have access to our money. We have the politics has the same feelers out towards us. Search engines know more about our businesses than we do. It's a terrifying concept, I think. Who controls all this? Where is it? And what if it went wrong? So I think this big is bad, in my opinion. I think we will need in the future, and I think this will happen, we will start to see a gradual move to try to decentralize power. Because at the moment, power is become global. Powers of companies are becoming more strong and dominant than the power of individuals or of governments. And this is a bad thing, surely. And I think one of the things that there's going to be in the future will be a move to decentralize things. A lot of this, as I said in my my program the other day about India, I feel a lot of this is going to come from a new model that will come out of India, actually, where they protect the small business, and I feel that there's we're going to have to see the same thing happen here, because we don't have good old capitalism anymore. Not that that was particularly good, but we don't really have that. We kind of have a communist style of globalism. We have a system that wants to control us and wants to control the society, and a corporate system that wants to kind of control the way we do things. So the corporate world that we have today is being used as a weapon against us. It's terrifying, and the Chinese system this is in many respects, of a communist system running a capitalist style society. So we have something new, something that is terrible, and we're taught to condemn all the things that have been in the past, condemn anything that we feel pride in our country, and we all now become these slaves of the corporate world, which I think is a bad thing, So what would happen if the internet went down? Could that ever happen? I think we will in 2024 get a big internet outage of some sort. Now, it can't go down completely, but I get a feeling there's going to be something. I'm going to talk about that in a moment a bit more in detail, but there's going to be something in 2024 that's going to cause us some serious thoughts about our dependence on the internet. I'll talk about that in a moment, but I'll just sort of say a few things. You can't take the whole internet down. It's not something that could be happened. It was designed originally as a weapon, because it was a communications system that was used that couldn't be broken, so it was built like a web. So if a nuclear bomb went down on New York, you'd still have a system and a network connected Washington or Brazil or India or whatever. You had a worldwide network, a web, that if you broke one part, you could bypass it, you see. So that's how it all works. So it was designed by the military. Other than that, a software bug would be pretty hard to bring down the whole internet. I think we might get a virus coming up in due course. That's something I'm going to talk about in a moment, but that's a thing that could take out parts of it and could damage it. I think artificial intelligence could bring down the internet. Particularly a sort of systemized DOS attack that was being used consciously in some way, and some software that was using it in a very clever way that could beat any attempts to stop it. So we probably haven't seen anything yet when it comes to the internet. We say, it can't be broken. You can't break down the infrastructure. You can't break down the physical servers that are creating the internet, but what if you broke down the whole way it works? If you got in with artificial intelligence and DOS attacks is when they sort of bombard things with lots of little requests all the time. But what if you had an ability to shift that in ways that could break up the whole system? Make it impossible to use. And also, as the internet increases and we get greater computing power, and we get, for example, quantum computing, where we're not just using binary, we're using yes, no, and maybe. With that type of system, the possibilities increase of calculating power, and it makes passwords almost impossible to maintain, because you can ask billions of requests until the likelihood of beating what you think would be an impossible password are done at lightning speed. So none of us are safe. None of our information is safe, and we're not safe at the moment because all our information is out there. We're not allowed to use it. Anybody can use it, which seems wrong. It should only be used when I say you can use it. So if the internet went down, planes would still fly, buses would still run, transport would still work. I expect the energy structures and energy system would still work. A lot of the basic things would not be affected. A long-term outage of the internet, we'd see logistics break down, and we'd certainly see businesses go bust. But if something like that happened, I think it would make us think about the world. I'm 4 days without the internet. Or intermittent internet, and it just shows you the damage it can do to your sanity sometimes, because it's so frustrating. Everything you need, all your research, all your business, in my case, all my readings and everything like that, was all affected by the internet. So I think it could bring, if it was a big scale thing, it could bring quite a big financial collapse, and is therefore one of the main targets for countries that don't want to see us succeed. You know, if there is a war, this is where the war will happen, because you can bring down the internet, you bring down the rest. But like I say, there's lots of safeguards for it. So I think in the future, the world's going to see an increase in the computing power and artificial intelligence, and I think passwords are going to be a threat. One of the things I've also feel fearful of is facial recognition, and being able to link facial recognition to your information and your details, and also facial recognition that can, like I say, anticipate a person's sexual orientation, for example. I mentioned this the other day. There's been tests done with it, and AI can spot a person's sexual orientation. It might be able to develop it further to even somehow spot its your political leanings, or your compliance, for example. You know, it might find this is a weak person, we can use this person. You know, this person can be used in some way negatively. So it's a real big brother on steroids, this, because they don't just watch us, but they can manipulate us, and they can manipulate the people around us. Another thing that's obviously going to happen in time in the future too is also going to be implants, because already, good news, we see people who have missing limbs being able to use their mental control to make that limb work. Robotics have come in, but that means we can send information out, right? So we can send a signal out to make an electronic hand move or something. But can we not also take information in? Will it not be possible in due course that we be able to have a plug-in? So when you go for work for a new firm, they say, right, okay, you're going to be doing this particular job on the, say, in the aviation industry, right, on ground school, but you have to put this chip in. You put the chip in, and suddenly you know exactly what to do. You're suddenly a very skilled worker because you have instant knowledge. It would be a very strange thing to think about how that would feel to suddenly have that knowledge, but it's almost a bit like intuitive knowing. It's just there. So that'll be a very strange thing, and I think this is something that's going to come very much, this idea of implants. And I think the biggest danger that's happening in the world today, and I don't know what you guys think about this, let's have some comments as we go along here too, because this is interesting too. Two-tier society we've already got. We're already getting a situation, we've got the haves and the have-nots, very much more as this cashless society moves forward. It's very, very hard nowadays to set up a small business. It's very hard to start something brand new. It all has to be done on the internet. It all seems to be done on the back of other big corporate organisations. You want to open a shop, you can't go down the high street and open a burger takeaway. No, that's quite complicated to do nowadays. It's still, those things are still there, but most businesses tend to have to go piggyback on things like eBay, piggyback on the back of things like Amazon and so forth, or other big platforms. We're still stuck with the big corporates still leeching money out of us. Just like, I'm doing this on YouTube. It's good in lots of ways, but also, what if YouTube didn't like me? What if YouTube suddenly decided, no, we don't like Craig, we don't like any of this spiritual nonsense, let's get rid of all that, just like they did on Wikipedia. So those are some of the things, corporate control. Probably no books, because everything's going to be digital as time goes on, isn't it? We're going to have digital world. Most of the books are going to go online. I expect. I love a proper book, but they're all going to go online in due course, and we'll have lots of access to knowledge, but no access to wisdom. That's the big one, I think, because there's a difference. There's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is facts, knowing things, information. Wisdom is something different, isn't it? And that's something that I think the world really, really lacks. We have the knowledge, but then we have to learn to integrate that knowledge. We have to learn to become better people from it. We have to learn how to behave, how to live, how to understand, how to become conscious. All those things are lost in this digital world. So as the world goes on, things are going to disappear. Jobs are going to disappear, aren't they, too? Things like cashiers will be gone, like I said, with Sainsbury's. You know, there's not a chance of those guys. Taxi drivers, you know, Uber we got at the moment, which is kind of got rid of normal taxi drivers, but that can go too, because we can have self-driving cars and things. Fast food cooks, you know, all the food can be instantly produced and automatically produced in these machines that you could just pull out. They got them in Japan already, you know, just you want fast food, there it is, all been done by machine. All of that can be done. Legal jobs, probably. You know, I asked the artificial intelligence to write me an affidavit just to see how it came out and if it could get it right with the information I put in. Phew, blimey, absolutely powerful, all in the right context. Those type of, and of course the creative industry. That's going down the pan too, isn't it? The creative industry is being hit harder and harder, that we can even use a person's face, and we can use the style of, you can write books in the style of H.G. Wells and so forth. You know, I've talked about this before. All very, very dangerous things. And we got all the drones going on in the world too. All this is interconnected. I'm talking about this because it's all part of this, our reliance on internet, our reliance on kind of technology, and our total kind of dependency on these things, you know. And we'll start seeing, I think, an advancement in the coming years of nanotechnology. These are like the mini, tiny little devices, like mini drones, but atoms wide, that could be used for medicine and things like that. But also could be used to, you know, infect people or take someone out. I mean, it could be used in warfare, of course, as well. So money might go entirely digital in due course. You know, already I'm finding it harder and harder to live by cash. I've been trying it as an experiment for a while, and it's really difficult to live by cash. What would happen? Who controls the cash? Who controls the digital money? You know, as we've seen, it can be switched off and it can be switched on, and this is always a danger. We'd have to have some form of safeguard in place, wouldn't we? Would a minimum wage save it? You know, people have been talking about the idea of a minimum wage. What would happen if you were completely switched off? You could die tomorrow because you couldn't buy a bottle of water if you're in the desert, you know. So there would have to be some safeguard that a person could get at least a minimum amount of money somehow. It would have to be an international agreement that there would have to be an absolute basic for everybody, that they could have enough credits or whatever we're going to call it, or bitcoins, to buy, you know. Otherwise, we're putting so many people in danger. And this might be something that I think will come in. And it might be an excuse for a minimum wage. But there's big dangers with that as well, you know, because who controls the minimum wage, you know? And does that make another complacency in people? Will that make people very lazy and less inclined to want to get on and work for the big corporate firms, you know? I mean, I work to the day I die, and will want to work to the day I go. Because I love what I'm doing, being a medium and a psychic and a writer and all those things. Wonderful work. But I don't know if I'd want to work to the day I die working in an office or something, you know? So it's kind of a dark dystopian world, I think, that the world of automatic society, I suppose I'm talking about. Anyway, I want to talk now a little bit about some of the thoughts for 2024, because tied in with all this idea with this digital world is, of course, the cryptocurrencies. And I know a lot of people come to me and ask in my private readings and my email readings and things, ask me about cryptocurrencies, and I kind of got quite a lot right with people, although I don't claim to know anything really about them. I don't know what's what with when it comes to knowledge about it, and in some ways I think that's probably better when you're making an estimate of things. I don't really like using spiritual gifts for this, what I would see of a form of gambling, really, but you know, it does happen. So you know, people ask you things and you don't necessarily always think that's what you would prefer them to ask, but so I just feel that there's going to be a big shake-up in 2024, and I felt there's two. I saw a kind of a bit of an earthquake, as it were, in March 2024. A shake-up, particularly of cryptocurrencies. This would affect the big ones, such as Bitcoin and Ethereum. It would affect those. But then also another one that follows, it's like an aftershock, which is perhaps even bigger, in June 2024. So March 2024, June 2024, I feel something's going to happen that's going to be pretty dodgy with cryptocurrencies, and I'm sensing it as something to do with China. Now, I've been going on a long time about that there will be an economic cave-in in China. I've been talking about this for a long time, that this would ultimately bring about a reform in China and a new democracy, and perhaps a breakup also of China as a country as we know it into smaller states, which I think will work as a confederation. I'm going to talk about that in another video sometime. But the actual meltdown, people are now even talking about it. We had a big one, didn't we, with Evergrande, when all things went wrong in the property market in China a few years ago. That affected the cryptocurrencies. Now, I get a sense that something big is going to happen in China 2024. I've kind of been talking about this for a while. I kind of thought it would have happened 2023. I thought we might have already had it by now. I was talking about October 2023 before. We're not in October yet. Maybe something's still to come. Maybe it's going to happen, but I'm getting this sense of something going wrong in 2024 now. So maybe, timing is always a real pain when it comes to trying to do these psychic predictions, because we have free will, because things can change anyway. So I've made a note to myself that I feel it's going to be something in those times, March or June 2024. And there was something else I felt was happening around that time. It's as if there's something in the solar system that's gone wrong, sunspots or something like that, because I get a feeling there's something that knocks out some satellites. Now, whether that's at the same time in March or June, but I'm getting this feeling there's something that's going to happen in 2024 that knocks out a satellite or two. I'm not saying the whole system goes down, because my focus has been today on things like the internet as well, particularly, and cashless societies and things. But I just get the sense that there's something that is untoward happening with the sun, and it kind of knocks something out for us. And simultaneously, I also feel it's like as if everybody jumps on at once, and maybe there's some hidden agenda here, some Chinese or Russian or North Korean attack of some sort. But I'm getting there's a sense in 2024 of there being a major cyber attack that actually gets into medical records. Really dangerous stuff. It gets right into medical records. And this also happens with something simultaneously going offline with a satellite. This might be an experiment someone's trying to do with these ideas that I was talking about using artificial intelligence as a means of warfare. So something's going on in the background with that. I'll talk separately about Ukraine and what's happening with Russia. I'll talk separately about things that are happening with China and Taiwan, which is what I've been saying is coming up still. That comes, I feel, with this meltdown of the Chinese society. I think it's all there. It's all teetering on the edge. So there's going to be a very interesting few years ahead. But I don't like to be pessimistic about these things all the time. The world's always got quite a lot of difficulties going on in it, hasn't it? But what we're talking about here with a cashless society and thing is almost a dystopian world, a science fiction type of world. But I also saw something else really nice coming into the world, because I think people will resist some of this. And I had quite a lot. Like I was doing one the other day for India, and I've still been on my mind this, and I've still been getting thoughts about this. And I feel that something good's going to come out of India one day with a different economic system, right? Which is going to have a worldwide influence. It doesn't mean that one's better than the other. This is all about helping the small guys, helping those that don't have, about making an advanced society, but looking out for those that are struggling at the bottom of society. And I'm also seeing something happening where there's going to be, and it might not even be in my lifetime, but I feel something will happen in which there's going to be a whole big shift, particularly in the east, of the nature and the borders of countries in the east. This won't be necessarily caused by wars. This will be caused often by global events and people having that necessity to come together and form new groupings. But I see ultimately China as not being in Tibet. And I mentioned before that I felt the Tibetan places would come under the auspices of a kind of an international park. It'll become an international park. And also some large parts of northern India and the whole Himalayas. And I'm seeing that as a place where there will be no internet connections. There will be no technology. It's like a park for humans where there's no technology. Somewhere where you go and you live, you can live there like a sadhu perhaps, or you can live there and go there just to learn. And it's going to become a holy place where people can go and seek spirituality. And I feel it's not necessarily Buddhist or Hindu or anything like that. This is something that is kind of something that occurs with a new international sort of religion, more like a spirituality, more like the essence of all religions, a universal religion of some sort that doesn't sort of say you've got to be this or you've got to be that, or you must believe to belong. It's about seeking. It's a seeker's place, and that would be for all faiths. So there's something like that happening, I feel, and I hope it happens in my lifetime. But I think there's going to be a lot of difficulties before this. There will be a lot of financial difficulties in the world, and there will be a lot of troubles with the weather and the rest of it. These things I'll talk about as well later. But all these things I feel are going to make us rethink and have to think in a much more radical way. It takes unusual and difficult times to create these bigger solutions. But I feel we'll get there. We'll get there. And I think ultimately something good is going to come out of this. But, it's the learning process on the way. Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed today's talk. It went on a lot longer than, so it's a double espresso from Craig, or maybe a full cappuccino. Thanks for joining. A bit frothy this time, I think. I went on a bit, perhaps. Thanks for joining me. And also, of course, if you want to book me, you're going to have to do mainly email readings, because I'm on and off with the internet at the moment with so many of my Zoom readings and things. So maybe I'll see some of you through the email readings this time rather than Zoom. There's a few there, but hopefully we'll be all right with them. Okay, thanks for joining me. Bye for now. So do you like what I have to say? Do you like my work? Well, why don't you support my work? Have a look in the description below to go to my website, find out about psychic readings, find out about our NAADI readings with the Indian NAADI Oracle, buy my books, and join my workshops online by Zoom. All there on the website psychics.co.uk.